What would you do to end nearly 100 years of gun control? What if I told you it was as simple as picking up the phone, calling Congress, and urging them to pass the SHORT Act? Today, we're going to be talking about how GOA is pushing for the end of short barrel restrictions in the National Firearms Act. Hi, I'm Ben Sanderson, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. We're calling on our members to call the House Ways and Means Committee at 202-225-3625 and tell them to pass H.R. 2395, the SHORT Act, as well as H.R. 404, the Hearing Protection Act. These bills would help repeal the infringements that have limited gun owners for nearly 100 years. Now, we just talked about the Hearing Protection Act in another video, but the SHORT Act, which stands for the Stop Harassing Owners of Rifles Today Act, was first introduced by Congressman Andrew Clyde and Senator Roger Marshall in 2022 in response to the Biden pistol brace ban. We were fortunate enough to sit down with our co-sponsors and interviewed them on the bill earlier this year. We've posted Congressman Andrew Clyde's interview last week on our channel, but here's Senator Marshall explaining the bill in his own words with our Senior Vice President, Eric Pratt.
Well, Eric, it's great to be with you, and I appreciate you and your organization's support. Something like what we're working on, like the SHORT Act, will never become law without your members actually reaching out to their senators. If there's one thing they remember today is to reach out to your senator, or your House members as well, of course, is about the SHORT Act. But the SHORT Act is really protecting your constitutional right to a short-barreled rifle. And I think it's just important to pause and describe why the Second Amendment is so important to us and why this law or this bill is very important as well. But you know, I'm not the first person to say this, but I believe with all my heart that the Founding Fathers wrote the Second Amendment to protect our First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
And we've seen overreach by the executive branch under the Joe Biden administration, and before him, President Obama. You know, my dad said President Obama was the best gun salesman we've ever had. But right. Joe Biden tried. Joe Biden tried as well. But we never dreamed that we would have a White House work so hard against our Second Amendment rights. And I'm standing right there beside you in your organization. So thanks for putting wind beneath ourselves. I want to talk about these short-barreled rifles just for a second. I think what some of the lawmakers up here in Washington don't understand is we don't have a police officer at every corner where I live in rural America. Most of our counties are 60 miles high and 60 miles across. Many times of the day there's one or two sheriff's officers. And we need some type of deterrent. Mm-hmm. And whether it's the meth heads or the crack heads or other people wanting to steal copper is very valuable. So they're out there stealing copper, or maybe they're out there trying to steal anhydrous ammonia to make their meth. But my farmers and ranchers need to be able to defend themselves. We cannot depend upon the police, the sheriff's officers, in case getting there in time. And I think there's other places in the country where people just feel like the law enforcement can't get there soon enough. We have hundreds of thousands of violent, illegal criminals that have been led into this country by Joe Biden. And I think more than ever, Americans want to be able to defend themselves. And I think the short-barreled rifle is the weapon of choice that many, especially women, would choose. One other point about this legislation. Basically, the Biden administration wanted to make any type of using a pistol brace, they wanted to call this a short-barreled rifle. I think of my veterans who no longer could hold a pistol by themselves, but with the help of this pistol brace, that they can shoot a pistol again. And I think that's a real important issue as well. So this is simple legislation. It would protect your constitutional right to use a pistol brace as well as protect your right to a short-barreled rifle.
So what do you think are the prospects for your legislation in this Senate?
Yeah, you know, it's a really tough uphill battle. In the Senate, it takes 60 senators to pass most any legislation, especially a legislation like this. So our challenge is to find 7 Democrat senators that would vote yes on this. And if any of your members live in a state with with one of those potential candidates that might vote for something like this, maybe the independents would, I don't know. I think it could pass on the House side. We have a slim majority there. It just takes 50% on the House side, but on the Senate side, it takes 60. And it'll be a tough hurdle. But the only chance we got is if your members engage and start reaching out to their members. And I think some education would be helpful. I think if you could educate those members and reach out to their staff. You don't have to talk to the congressman or the senator. Get to know their staff and talk to them. Well, what is a short-barreled rifle? And what is a pistol brace? and talk to them like I did, explaining why this short-barreled rifle would be the weapon of choice. Probably don't use the word weapon. The best firearm to protect yourselves in rural America.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy for people. And you hear what Senator Marshall's saying. It is going to be an uphill battle in the Senate, so it's really important for you as the ones who vote for senators to contact them and let them know, and certainly getting co-sponsors to your legislation, that's an important part of the process as well. So I want to encourage you to contact your senators, and you'll have the phone number there on the screen, as well as alerts that you can get from our website, to contact your senators and urge them to co-sponsor the SHORT Act, which has been sponsored, the chief sponsor, Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas.
The Biden administration weaponized the nearly 100-year-old 1934 National Firearms Act against gun owners by claiming that millions of braces purchased and owned legally for a decade were now all of a sudden illegal. For those who weren't in compliance with Biden's regulation, possession could mean up to a decade in jail and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. Luckily, GOA and other groups managed to get nationwide injunctions against the enforcement of this rule, and Congress even voted on ending the rule in its entirety. That vote passed the House, but unfortunately came up short in the Senate. While the ATF is currently unable to enforce the pistol brace ban, the underlying law, the National Firearms Act, is still on the books. And to make matters worse, the courts are moving very slowly on this issue as well. As long as the NFA is enforced, then future anti-gun administrations will have a way to target law-abiding gun owners. In fact, anti-gunners have pushed the idea of putting AR-15s and other popular firearms under the regulations of the NFA, making them harder to purchase. But not to worry, we have a plan. That's why we're working with Congress on the SHORT Act to target the heart of the Biden pistol brace ban. The bill would remove short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and any other weapons from the National Firearms Act. The SHORT Act would instead treat them like any other firearm you'd buy over the counter at the gun store. That means instead of having to fill out all those NFA forms, including sending your fingerprints, photo ID, and $200 to the ATF, you just have to do a normal background check at your local FFL. Now you might be saying, okay, I get why we want to remove short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns from the NFA, so those definitions can't be weaponized against us in the future. But what about the any other weapon category? Well, the answer to that is that the any other weapon, or AOWs, are a catch-all term for firearms that don't fit neatly into the NFA definitions. If we get rid of the other definitions, but we keep the AOWs, that means ATF could continue to abuse the NFA by just redesignating certain pistol-braced firearms as any other weapon. For example, a firearm with a short barrel and a pistol brace isn't designed to be fired from the shoulder, which means it's not a short-barreled rifle or a short-barreled shotgun. But if you add a vertical foregrip and a pistol grip, then the firearm isn't meant to be fired with one hand either. So therefore, it's not a handgun as well. Because it's not designed to be fired from the shoulder, and it's not designed to be fired with a single hand, ATF could try and deem a short-barreled, pistol-braced firearm with a foregrip an AOW or any other weapon. There's just no end to the stupidity of the NFA, so we just have to gut it all. And that's why we need your help. We recently did a video on the Hearing Protection Act, and combined with the SHORT Act, gun owners have a chance to deal a historic blow against the nearly 100 years of NFA infringements. Be sure to watch that video to learn more about how you can help take suppressors off the NFA as well. We're calling on our members to call the House Ways and Means Committee at 202-225-3625 and tell them to pass H.R. 2395, the SHORT Act, as well as H.R. 404, the Hearing Protection Act, and to gut the National Firearms Act. Now thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights your rights.